Want to teach your kids financial literacy but not sure where to start? Greenlight can help. With Greenlight, parents can keep an eye on kids' spending and saving, while kids and teens use a card of their own to build money confidence. As a parent, you can send instant money transfers, set up chores, automate allowance, and more. It's a convenient way to run your household, customized to your family's needs, and the easy way to raise financially smart kids. Get started with Greenlight today and get your first month free at greenlight.com/pod.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
And as a note here for anyone watching live, feel free to submit a question as we're talking. We might be able to get to it on air. And with that, I'll dive in. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And tonight we take questions from our listeners as part of our regular mailbag segments. Some of the topics we're going to discuss tonight include whether or not we're going to see Samuel Basallo promoted before this season ends, what Brandon Young's profile looks like, how the Orioles could stake out their starting rotation, possible future rule changes in the major leagues, and more. That will all be coming up in just a moment. But first, Orioles on the Verge is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, and get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. And we always appreciate the questions we get from our listeners. Most of them do come from our Discord community, but if you follow us on social media, you can actually send us a question at any time. You don't have to wait for us to put out the call for a mailbag segment. Just send us a question. We might be able to read it off during one of our mailbag segments. And I'll let Nick start this one off. We got a pretty good question about a promotion that hasn't happened in the minor leagues yet, but maybe should.
Samuel Basallo from Bobby Jones says, when do we see Basallo in Norfolk? And part two of that question, is he the last Bowie prospect to get promoted this year? What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, probably think he would be the last of the Bowie prospects, position player prospects, I should say, to get promoted. Just because I think maybe him and Beavers will go up at the same time for that last week of the season, with Norfolk having a extra week compared to Bowie. At this point, I just say let him wait until that last little week, get a little taste the way, I can't remember, was it Norby a couple years ago got, and then just like he did with Bowie last year, he got that last little week and then went into the offseason preparing to start there the next year. At this point, I don't see the rush. If they haven't promoted him now, just let him get his work in at AA. I mean, it would be cool if he got promoted a little bit earlier than that, but he's playing. He's playing well. He's still an elite prospect. I think he's had a great year, even if he is just hovering around 800. It would be nice if he could stick over 800 APS to be a real prospect. No, but yeah, I'm happy with his season, and he'll be in AAA this year, but it might only be for a week.
Yeah, I agree with Bob. I do think we're going to see him in AAA. What I don't think will happen, though, is that you see him promoted and you don't see Dylan Beavers promoted. I think both of them are going to go up at some point. And the final week or two is probably the right timetable. One thing you would have to consider is if you promote him before Bowie's season ends, you would have to find someone to take his place in Bowie. But for the last week or two of the season, that's not a big deal. And that Creed Willems has actually put together a really nice year at Aberdeen. So I would certainly be happy for him if he got a cup of coffee at Bowie to end this season. So I do think Basallo is going to get promoted, but it might be for a pretty limited time.
Yeah, I was thinking with Basallo, probably the last 2 weeks of the season. So like September 10th at Durham, he gets that series and then a home series against Nashville to finish the year. Like, Bowie isn't going to the playoffs, so there's no reason to keep him there for like a playoff experience. Norfolk gets the extra week of games, so it's just enough time to get to AAA, see AAA pitching, get used to Harbor Park. Nice gesture to say, great job this year. You end the year in AAA. You're one step away from the majors now. Is he the last Bowie prospect promoted? He shouldn't be. Alex Pham should be in AAA. He is having a phenomenal month. He might statistically be the best pitcher in the entire system over the last month. Cameron Weston has earned himself a promotion to AAA, I think, at this point. Dylan Hyde and Keegan Gillies should probably be in AAA's bullpen right now. They all won't be promoted before the end of the year because I think there's a lot of veterans on Norfolk's roster that the org likes having as depth. But all four have certainly earned a promotion at this point. So I don't think if Basayo is promoted at the end of the year, I don't think he's going to be the last. At least one or two of those arms, I think, gets a shot to end the year in AAA as well.
Okay, we'll move on to a question from the Bird is the Word. He wants to know, with Big Al, that's Albert Suarez for the uninitiated, emergence and the uncertainty surrounding Grayson Rodriguez, would you be comfortable with Suarez as the Game 3 starter in a playoff series? Zach?
Bob, I think you said a couple weeks ago that Suarez doesn't seem like much phases him, and I think that's pretty accurate. And clearly my concerns at that time about his workload were overblown because he seems to be coming on stronger here in the last few weeks. Ideally, Grayson Rodriguez is back on the mound within the next month, and he is starting a playoff game. But if that doesn't happen, I'm fine with starting Suarez in Game 3. And in fact, I think that there is a clear gap between him and Dean Kramer at this point. Maybe you could say that says more about Kramer than it does about Suarez, but Suarez is on such a good run. He's done so much for this team this year, and I don't think he'll be phased by the spotlight at all. So ideally, we have Rodriguez back, but if Suarez ends up starting Game 3 in a series, I'm perfectly comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think the Grayson Rodriguez quote the other day about recognizing the injury from last time he had it and feeling as if it was much more mild. I know take that with a big bowl of salt, but I found that very encouraging. But for the sake of the conversation and the question there, if Rodriguez is not pitching and you have to go with Suarez, I'm okay with it. And mostly because at this point, what else? There's nothing you can do. You can't go off and trade for a bigger arm. You can't do, should have traded for more than, no, it's done. I know Trevor Rogers had another bit of a stinker tonight, but you can't do anything else at this point. You got to roll with who you got. Unfortunately, McDermott is down with an injury, so that's one less arm too. But you look at his last 3 starts. I know they weren't against playoff teams, but still Toronto, Tampa Bay, Boston, 17 and 2/3 shutout innings with 17 strikeouts and 3 walks. We'll all take that. And I do agree. I thought this is a guy who, when I was thinking about this question, how nothing's going to phase this guy, I just think I'm watching on TV far away, obviously not in the clubhouse, but this is a guy who hasn't had much MLB success in his career, wasn't even in Major League Baseball for years, goes to Korea, goes to Japan, he goes elsewhere to keep his career alive, never gave up on the MLB dreams, and now he's here. He has been a savior for this team in 2024, and I just have all the confidence in the world that if you give him that ball, if you are forced to in a Game 3 situation, I don't think the moment's going to be too big for him. Like we saw it with a lot of those younger arms in last year's playoff series. It may not go his way, but I think it would probably be because he's pitching well. Maybe he just runs into a buzzsaw that night. Obviously, we want Burns, Eflin, and Grayson, but if you've got to have Suarez, I agree. I don't think the moment's going to be too big for him.
It's funny. I can still remember getting excited, spring training 2024, getting excited. Albert Suarez, this guy looks pretty good out there on the mound. And then just hats off to him and Michael Elias and company for identifying the talent there and bringing him in, and for him for just coming up and doing it. We've talked about it. He's got ice water in his veins, to quote Dickie V from the college basketball ranks. But yeah, I don't know about comfortable with him starting Game 3, but of the options, yeah, I think if Grayson's unavailable, he's the guy. I would pick him over Kramer. and obviously Rogers as well. I'd feel much more comfortable if he was like a game 4 or bulk guy behind the top 3 starters. But yeah, if push comes to shove, I want him out there. I don't think the playoffs are going to phase him as much as they would some other guys.
I'll go to the next question on this list, which concerns perhaps certainly one of the top pitching prospects in the system right now, and someone who could be the next man up in terms of his major league debut. Matt wants to know, I feel like Brandon Young is the next man up. Can we get a breakdown of his game? And I'll start with Nick on this one.
Pick an episode over the last month. We talked about Young a lot. Lance Brazdowski did a great job talking about Young in his piece. Look, it is true. I do think he is one of the next guys to come up. The fastball is in the mid-90s. He's had the velo tick. It's up to like 95, 96. Absurd swing and miss numbers with the fastball and the changeup. And I know, as Lance highlighted in his piece, his Substack piece, it's because it's got this unique release at his height. It's a high spin pitch from a unique position, and hitters hate it. And the changeup, he commands that strike zone. I think his last outing, he threw his fastball in the zone for like a 65% end zone strike rate. The changeup was like 50-something% as well. And he had like I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, I looked at it this morning, like a 40% call strike plus whiff percentage just on the changeup alone in his last outing on Sunday. The curveball was a pitch I fell in love with when he was in college, and it's probably his third best offering, but even in Lance's post, he had it graded as like a 100 stuff plus, so that's league average. That's 3 pitches Lance had him at a 100 or greater stuff plus, with the potential for a 4th in the slider, which, again, referencing Lance's article, it's got Grayson and Kramer shape. It's just a matter of like tinkering with the velo and what that will do with the pitch. I think my big thing with Brandon Young is what we're talking about with control and in zone and swing and miss stuff. What we just talked about, Peter Van Loon. Brandon Young throws the ball in the strike zone a lot, like a ton, way more than most of his peers, and he gets good results. Other than the one outing in AAA where he was removed early because he was sick. Other than that, he's been effective in the strike zone against more advanced hitters. And I just think that if the Orioles weren't excited about what he could potentially bring, he would have been moved at the deadline. And I don't know if he's going to get a shot this season, but he is 100% going to be protected this winter unless a team offers something nice for him. Of course, then the Orioles maybe think about it, but I think he's protected this offseason, and he is in contention for Major League roster starting next year. And if you really need a guy this year, I agree. Brandon Young is probably the next guy you want to look at.
Yeah, he's got solid inverted break that teams are looking for, especially the Orioles. The fastball leads the way, but he's just solid 4-pitch guy who's going to throw the ball in the zone. We got Zach Eflin at home here. Maybe not, but he's just a super solid mid to back end rotation guy. I think he's not going to wow you, but the results have spoke for themselves, I think, on the page this year. And I think Orioles fans, it definitely gives a unique look on the mound compared to some of the other guys that have been out there. And yeah, I mean, he pitched Sunday. Trevor Rogers pitched tonight at the time of recording. It's Monday. So I think if they wanted to make that switch in their rotation, it's definitely possible.
I do wonder, especially with Chase McDermott's injury, if it's more likely we see Young before the season ends, because you know there's going to be a need for a spot starter at some point in the next 6 weeks. And if you don't have McDermott as the option, you know that Young is going to get a 40-man roster spot this offseason. You might as well just go ahead and add him now if you need someone to fill in for you. I'll just add, and I think both of you are right in your assessments with him. One thing I would add is that he hasn't had the struggles we've seen other pitchers have when they make that initial jump from AA to AAA. With the automated ball strike zone and the changes to the ball, I've kind of learned to accept that walk rates are going to go up from AA to AAA. And Young's has, but it hasn't gone up to an extent that is the least bit alarming. He's still striking guys out. As you both mentioned, he gets his pitches in the zone consistently. To me, that is a really good sign. So if you're looking at who is sort of next man up beyond Povich and McDermott, who both made their major league debuts this year, that could be, rotation pieces in the near future. Young is definitely that guy.
Yeah, a lot of stuff's going to go up when you get to AAA. Even I don't know what the league average ERA is this year. I think last year was like over 5. It's been over 5, I think, for the last 2 years. He's at like 3.3. It would be lovely if the Orioles could lock up this division early, and you see Brandon Young get some run. You see more Cade Povich starts. You let these young guys get acclimated this year. Obviously, that's much harder to do when you're in the thick of an AL East division chase here, and so we'll see how they decide to work in some of these young arms. But we'll go. Is it my turn? Yes. Let's go to the next question from Connor, who says, this should be fun considering how this game Monday night just ended. Which 3 relievers will have the highest leverage index between now and the end of the regular season? Zach, what do you think?
Sir Anthony Dominguez is probably going to be one of the 3. Yanier Cano is probably going to be the second, and then the third. I really don't know how the Orioles feel about Craig Kimbrell right now. How do any of us feel about Craig Kimbrell right now? When are they going to use Cionel Perez? Do they start to look at Bert Smith as more of a high leverage option? I'm back and forth about that myself personally, and right now I would say ideally no. But over the last month, and there's been a lot of situations where Kimbrell has been on the mound, that I wish it was Bert Smith on the mound, and that tells you a lot about the state of the Orioles bullpen. I would love to sit here and say that Danny Colomé is going to somehow end up in that top 3, but he's coming back from an injury. I don't know exactly when you're going to get him back and how he's going to be used when he comes back. So I would guess that right now you're looking at Dominguez, Cano definitely being 2 out of the 3. And I think that at some point they're going to try to work Kimbrell into high leverage situations again, because if nothing else, he's the most experienced arm in your bullpen, and you're going to hope that the good Kimbrell is there for you in the postseason, that he's had some high leverage situations leading up to that, even if he hasn't been the closer.
I'm out on Kimbrell. Velocity's going down. It's not good. The trends the past few years, I don't like it. Honestly, I think, Sir Anthony Dominguez gave up game-winning home run, time of recording this, gave up a home run yesterday, even in the win. That one was more of a cheapie, but I still like the arm. I still think he's got the best stuff in the bullpen. He'll be up there, I agree. Him and Cano will be the top 2. Jacob Webb, I feel like, is going to be back soon, and we know Hyde likes to pitch him quite a bit, which might have led to the injury in the first place. But I think he's an option. I think Birch Smith is this year's Jacob Webb, and he's an option. He's been really good. I like his stuff. What about Colin Selby? This guy, they brought him in from waivers. He's been down in AAA working on some stuff. Big arm, great stuff all around. First appearance for the Orioles tonight, struck out 3 of the 4 batters that he faced. So gotta like that start. Maybe he goes on a roll here and become an option for you as well. So yeah, that third choice is going to be the tricky one.
Yeah, I got Sir Anthony Dominguez for sure. Like that pitch to Francisco Alvarez was 98 up and in. I just pulled it up. We were recording, didn't get to watch it. It's 98 up and in. Unfortunately,
3-0 pitch.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Francisco Alvarez likes him up and in. So maybe if he just would have went outside, maybe it'd be a different story. And it's not that easy, but I'm okay with that. I think that one's just an unfortunate situation there. I'm still saying Sir Anthony Dominguez. Like, we ride with Sir Anthony. Like, you look at his playoff numbers too in his career, they're unbelievable. I like having put him in there in the closer's role and let him get comfortable in that situation. Better prepared for the playoffs. I agree. I don't want to see Kimbrell anymore. I don't care about his resume. I don't care if he is a future Hall of Famer. If he has an issue with it, see you later. Like, I don't know what he's like. If he's like taking it in stride and he's okay with that, if so, great. Like, that's awesome. But if he's going to like cause a ruckus over like losing this 9th inning role, see ya. You're not going to be on the playoff roster. Don't care anymore. You got to win these games. And to have him out on the mound, like, I've literally found myself turning the game off and just like either going to bed or walking away, watching something else, because I don't want to watch him pitch anymore. But to answer the question, before we just turn into a Kimbrell rant session, which I feel like would be good for everybody. But Dominguez, Cano, obviously. I had struggled with the third one as well. I almost wanted to say Keegan Aiken. screw it, why not? He's been
striking out 11 per 9. Like he's been good. I mean,
I don't know. I thought about putting Aiken on that list as well. After a Monday night's game, Colin Selby could be a lot of fun. That was some disgusting stuff. I want to go Ciano Perez. I put him as my third guy. I know he's iffy as well. He's not a guy you always feel super confident when he takes the mound, but I know, again, Rates and Barrels, I know we reference him a lot. They were talking about him. They referenced him the other day and his unique profile. Although I think Eno called him Chino Perez. But still, I know what you're talking about. I'm going to go Dominguez, Cano, and Perez. But hopefully, Kimbrel's going to find his way onto that list because the Orioles are going to give him another shot.
Yeah, and to be clear, I was not advocating for Kimbrel to be on that list. I don't want him on that list either. I was just predicting that the Orioles are going to find a way for him to be on that list. Yeah. I don't want to watch 92 to 93 mile per hour fastballs up and away to every hitter where he works himself into a 3-0 count and then just throws a breaking ball that has no bite to it right over the middle of the plate. I don't want to watch that anymore, but I digress.
All right, let's
make this new school year an opportunity for your kids to learn important life skills with Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app for families where kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely while parents keep an eye on kids' money habits. Greenlight also helps families get into their fall routine with a chores feature that lets parents assign chores and pay kids allowance when they check them off. Get your first month free at greenlight.com/pod. Greenlight.com/pod.
Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. See ebaymotors.com.
Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify is there to help you grow. Shopify helps you sell everywhere, from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms, and sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. What I love about Shopify is how no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., and Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
Move on to our buddy Nash's question. How do you feel about the potential for 6-inning minimum for starters, which is the rule changes that have come up over the past week that the commissioner's office would like to try to institute? Would it change the way you evaluate certain pitching prospects? Nick?
It probably would change how you evaluate certain pitching prospects. My instant reaction, though, without thinking about it too much, I just saw like the headline. I saw the conditions. You can be removed if you give up 4 runs, you reach 100 pitches, or if you're hurt or are claimed to be injured. But I think if you're removed due to even like fatigue or something, then it's a mandatory IL stint. I don't know. My gut reaction, I don't know how you guys feel. My gut reaction is I think it's dumb. I don't like it. That's my if it's because you want to generate more offense, you're doing so at the expense of pitchers who are already dropping like flies, and then you added the pitch clock to speed the game up, which has been great. But now you want to add more offense to potentially slow this thing down. I don't get it. I don't. If it's the nostalgia thing, because you want to see starting pitchers. I live 3.5 hours away from Baltimore, so I get it. I would love to plan my trips and know that I'm going to go watch Grayson. I'm going to go watch Burns. I'm going to go watch the starting pitcher that I love. And ideally, they're going to go, 6-7+ innings. I would love that as well, but I also want my team. It's going to open up a can of worms because we're talking about hiding the Orioles. But I want my team, my team's manager to like properly navigate the game and do what's best with the matchups and knowing when to bring in the bullpen arms and such. I'd rather do that, watch that, if it means that starter goes an inning or two less, if it means they win the game because of a smart pitching strategy. I don't know. I don't like it at all, to be honest. But that's just my initial thought. If they implement it, will I care 6 months into next season or whenever it's implemented? I won't give it a second thought and I won't care at all. But I get to complain right now, so I'll complain for a minute.
Yeah, it was Jesse Rogers over at ESPN had reported initially that 2026 would be the earliest that it would go into effect. What concerns me is that organizations are already developing pitchers to be 5 and dive guys at the most. And if I'm looking at this for the Orioles, just to bring up a very good example, I love Luis De Leon as a pitching prospect. I've talked about that ad nauseum. But now if I have to look at De Leon as going a minimum of 6 innings every start as compared to just being really dominant for 5 or even 4 1/3 or 4 2/3, that's going to change the calculus a little bit where, all right, well, he can't be pumping high 90s fastballs. And that's the other thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get pitchers to completely change the way that they pitch because we're emphasizing velocity. We're emphasizing spin rate. Lance Brozdowski talked about the sweeper and how good of a pitch that is when he was on our show, but that how it might or might not be an underlying cause of some of the injuries we've seen in the last couple of years. Now you're going to have to take the sweeper off the table for a lot of pitchers because if that is a factor in durability and availability, it's just going to change the way that a lot of things are done for pitchers. So ideally, if you are going to do it, you give it a longer runway. And I understand why you want to force this, why you want pitchers to go deeper into games. And I wish baseball would go back to that myself. But I think it's more likely to be effective if some smart front office somewhere looks at this and says, you know what? There's an advantage we can gain over 29 other teams by developing our starters to take the ball for 6 innings every time out. That's going to become the new thing. And then eventually 29 other teams are going to try to copy that blueprint. This all started with organizations like the Rays, who figured out that they could build a dominant bullpen behind a guy who delivered max effort stuff for 5 innings. Someone else could come along in a couple of years and make it the inverse, where we can get a starter to work 6 or 7 innings. And now we've got an advantage over teams. Our bullpen's not as taxed. Pitchers aren't getting hurt as much. I think that will happen if you let it play out eventually. And I just think that there's, much like the sticky stuff rule, which I think we're going to talk about in a minute, it's a well-intended thing that at first looks good, but when you start to dig a little bit deeper, you realize that it forces on a lot of changes that could lead to more injuries and more risk for pitchers.
Yeah, I like to lead off that I like that they're willing to make changes like this and get creative to try to get the game more exciting and more engaging. I've liked some of the rules that they've instituted in the recent past, and I want the ABS challenge system to be in a play as soon as possible. But yeah, this is kind of silly because I think teams are just going to ignore it, and I think they'd be happy to lose their DH and still get the advantage that they can naturally, and they'll just use pinch hitters till they run out of them and then bunt their pitchers. I don't think it would have the desired effect. I just don't think it would make that much of an impact. I agree. This is one of those things that baseball is cyclical, and you got to just let the game evolve to a certain extent with this. And like you're saying, I mean, if you're worried about pitcher injuries, this does not seem like the best way to avoid or reverse that trend. So I agree with you guys. And as a follow-up, is there a recent rule change that you have liked at least better than you thought you would? And similarly, would you get rid of any of them?
I like the pitch clock. I like the faster games. I don't like the Manfred Man, whatever you want to call it. I don't like calling it the Ghost Runner. But Manfred Man, whatever you want to, that extra runner on second base. I don't like that rule. Honestly, I would prefer to just leave nobody on base, just pick up where you left off, keep playing, but do an innings limit and call it a tie. I think they do that in Japan or something when they were implementing this rule. I know there's a lot of discussion about that. I feel like that's pretty unpopular take, and a lot of people would disagree with me there, but I wouldn't mind that at all. But I think bring the sticky stuff back. Like that's like if it's going to help pitchers control the ball, if that could help maybe with injuries, if that's another thing, just bring the sticky stuff back. Like hitters, I feel like it's been so much more advantage hitters, but that's every professional sports league. It's all about how to drive more offense in the games and make it more exciting. But like, and I feel like pitchers are just like the game is being designed to knock pitchers down and give hitters this uber advantage. Like, give pitchers a little bit here. Give them the sticky stuff. Let them control the ball better. Who cares if they got a little bit of a higher spin rate? Hitters will continue to adjust as they always do. Bring it back.
Yeah, to start off with the rule change that I think I like some of the things that have been designed to bring stolen bases back into the game a little bit. Like I think that forcing a pitcher to not disengage more than twice has worked, and I think the larger bases, although as ridiculous as they look sometimes, have helped, and I think that they also have the potential to reduce player injuries. I agree with Nick, though. The ghost runner has to go. I was fine with the ghost runner in the COVID year and even the year after that because you weren't sure from day to day if you were going to have enough players on your roster. So availability was a priority, but it should have gone away after that. And to me, the litmus test is if a rule is not good enough for the playoffs, it probably shouldn't exist. So get rid of it. If you want to go for a compromise, Nick's approach is a good one. Another one that I've had in mind is that starting in the 13th inning, maybe you either have a swing off or you do have the ghost runner because by then each team has gone through the lineup at least once. So you can force the game to end a little bit faster. But it shouldn't be bottom of the 10th, runner on second, nobody out. Because again, that's one more thing that's putting stress on the pitchers. And it's absolutely favoring the offense. So that rule has to go. They got to figure out something with the sticky stuff. I could go on all night about Rob Manfred's decision making, but I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I like that real quick. I do instead of the tie thing. I like that much better. Bring the Manfred Man, the extra runner in like the 13th inning or something. I like that ideally, but we can keep it in the minor leagues because honestly, I don't need to watch 10, 11, 12 innings of minor league games. We can end those in the 10th inning with a walk-off bunt single. That's fine with me. But
I'll be the odd man and say I don't mind the extra inning rule, especially for the regular season. It is a good point that if you can't do it in the playoffs, why do it at all? I do like that point, but maybe there's a thing where you can do 10th inning, runner on first. 11th inning, runner on second. Move progressively more advantageous to the offense as it goes on and on. I don't know, but the pitch clock's the best thing to happen in baseball since I've been alive, so at least there's that.
I'll go on this question, which kind of touches on everything we've talked about a little bit tonight, and that's injuries. If you could only, and this is from Bird as a Word, if you could only have one back of Danny Coulombe, Jacob Webb, Grayson Rodriguez, or Jordan Westburg, who would you choose and why? I'll start with Bob.
I think I got to go with Grayson. I know an everyday player like Westberg, you want to have him back too, but just when you're going into the playoffs, I think having the top three, having to be able to roll out Burns, Eflin, Rodriguez as your rotation is just, it's got to happen. It's too good not to. So give me that. And it's a tough choice because all these guys are going to be super valuable down the line. It'd be awesome to have them all back, or at least most of them. But yeah, Grayson number one for me.
Westberg has become whatever because the Roman Empire is back and he is alive and well. So we're good there. I'm joking. We need Westberg back as well. But if I'm picking one, yeah, I'm going Grayson too. Going back to the last question we just talked about Albert Suarez, how do you feel about him having to take ball 3, and we all agreed, okay, if there's no other options, like he's the best one, clearly. So I wanted to say Danny Coulomb to kind of build off that question as well. And like he's been missed sorely in this bullpen. Having him back would be a massive boost to this entire team, not just the bullpen. But if I can only pick one, I want one of the top young arms in all of baseball, in Grayson Rodriguez taking the ball. It was game 2, if it's game 3, I don't care. He's taking the ball for you in the playoffs, and he's going to give you a pretty darn good chance to win the game. So we need Grayson back.
I'll be the outlier here and go with Westberg. You can make a case for any of these guys coming back, but bottom line is Westberg, everyday player, all-star this year. I think really someone who is a leader on that team, as far as we can tell. Granted, he had not been hitting that well leading up to the injury. Not that the injury was a factor in that, but he had not been hitting well leading up to the injury, but I think he was going to come out of it. And in tight games, having him on third base or having him in your lineup over having Ramon Urias in there or someone else can be a difference in a one-run loss. So I'll go with Westberg, but ideally all 4 of these guys are back as soon as possible.
Agreed. Last question here from Bill. How do you expect the Kobe Mayo reset to unfold? I imagine all of us have fairly similar answers to this question, though, but we'll start with Bob. What do you see happening with Mayo the rest of this year? Do we see him back this year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we do. I think it's kind of weird that he was demoted before this week and did not appear in any of AAA Norfolk's games afterwards. I don't know, maybe just they were in Gwinnett, so maybe just wait till the following week when they're home, less travel. Maybe they had stuff they could work on in the meantime. I don't think it's like a conspiracy or anything. I just think it's a little odd. But I do think he'll be back, whether it's when the expanded rosters open up September 1st or a little bit after that even. I think he can help you in too many ways, especially with the extra roster spot, even if it's not everyday third baseman the way he eventually will be, in my opinion. I think just having his big power right-handed bat off the bench, it would serve some purpose down the stretch. So, yeah, I think he'll be back, and I think he'll be better. Yeah, I think it was awesome they let him get that first hit before they did demote him, take that pressure off. So when he does come back, he'll be on a mission and not just trying to scratch out a base hit to check that off.
Yeah, I think we will see Mayo again this season in some capacity. It might not be until Norfolk's season ends. If I had a guess right now, I think that starting this week, they're going to prioritize getting him at bats and going over video, pouring over the data they have to figure out what he needs to improve on so that he's successful the next time around at the major leagues. And we know with the Orioles' track record that they're more than capable of doing this with their prospects. If he comes back up this year, I wouldn't be shocked if he's not used that much. But it could be an opportunity for him to get a firsthand look at what the stretch run towards the playoffs and the playoffs look like, because I do think that the Orioles see him factoring into their plans for 2025 somehow, and that at a minimum, he's going to be next year as Colton Cowser, where he might not go into spring training with a guaranteed roster spot, but if he goes in and performs well, there's going to be a place for him on the roster. So even if we don't see a whole lot of him a second time around the major leagues, hopefully later this year, I don't think that says much about how they see him in 2025, because I think there will be room for him somewhere.
Yeah, I think you do see him back up, and it is, like Zach said, very limited. It's DH, it's pinch hit. A lot of people are going to wonder why he's not playing as much. But if Westberg comes back at a reasonable amount of time, which I don't know if we've gotten any more updates in the last week or so about Westberg's injury, but ideally he is back before the playoffs start, and you've got him over at third base. And you don't need Kobe Mayer to play defense. You're just adding that bat back to the lineup for certain situations. Kind of a lot like Kerstad last year around that time. And who knows about what Kerstad's situation is. Hopefully he's doing okay as well with the concussion symptoms. Haven't seen him in a while, going back on the IL because of that. But with Mayo, I just think like the book on these guys when they come up, we always talk about, the gap between AAA and the majors is wider than ever before. it's because like, how many articles do we reference on this show that do these super, super deep dives on these prospects? Like, you weren't getting these articles 4 or 5 years ago, I don't think, on a lot of guys. But now there's so much data. You have all this baseball savant information, so much more data available on these prospects and minor leaguers that when they come up to the major leagues, like, there is a complete and fully written book on Kobe Mayo and how to attack him. And major league pitchers are going to be able to execute that to a T. And so now it's going to be up to the hitter to adjust. And so I think this past week, we haven't seen him in Norfolk, as you guys have mentioned. I do think it's been, here's what they did to you. Like, in reviewing, all right, how are now we going to counteract that? And let's put a plan in place. You're going to be back in Norfolk for the next 3 weeks, maybe a month. Here's how we're going to adjust. And so next time we bring you up, hopefully at the end of the year, you'll be more prepared, and we'll give this a go again. So I have no concern. My outlook on Mayo hasn't changed. I just think he's going to be a very good hitter in the major leagues for many years to come. Just think the book was on him, and now it's his turn to adjust, like so many others have. So yeah, but I do think we see him again by the end of the year.
Good questions as always. Thank you to our listeners for reaching out. We'll have a mailbag here soon, maybe next week or maybe sometime in the final weeks of the regular season. And of course, we'll have plenty of coverage for you as the minor league season winds down and the Orioles gear up for what is hopefully going to be an extended run in the postseason. We will be back next week. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to sign up to become a member of our Patreon community. You can join as a paying member for as little as $3 a month, and at the $5 and $10 levels, have exclusive access to bonus daily coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself. You will also have access to our monthly updates of our top 50 prospects countdown. So patrons are the only ones who get those. Otherwise, it's updated twice a year on the main feed. So plenty of bonus coverage if you sign up for our Patreon community. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Sved, and you've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.
You know when you're listening to a true crime story that has an unbelievable plot twist that makes you stop in your tracks? That's what our podcast, People Are the Worst, brings you with each episode. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Rebecca. We're identical twins who love true crime cases that make you say, didn't see that coming, and we hate the people responsible for them. Listen to People Are the Worst now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.